This is the story of the one. He's responsible for keeping a leading healthcare facility clean and safe. And he trusts Grainger's high-quality HVAC cleaning and safety products, combined with their world-class supply chain, to consistently deliver, ensuring he's covered inside and out, so he can focus on keeping his facility clean to help protect the health of everyone inside. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get.
Are you a property owner looking to maximize your investment? Tired of the day-to-day hassles of managing your rental properties? Welcome to Brownstone Properties, where we take the stress out of property management. From tenant screening to maintenance and everything in between, we'll ensure your property shines.
Hello there.
Visit brownstoneproperties.com and come by our office, 3720 Old Forest Road in Lynchburg.
Ms. Fernandez, what are those tiny things?
Those are what we call amoebas. You can only see them through a microscope.
Wow.
Today's students are tomorrow's great thinkers and innovators. But right now, there's a funding crisis in public schools. Millions of kids go to schools that don't have funding for books, computers, and so much more just because of where they live. You can help change that. Donors Choose is a nonprofit that lets you support students and teachers in your community and beyond. You choose which supplies to support. You could provide first graders with pencils and paper, or other students with their first chapter books, help a music class get a guitar.
You could even supply a classroom like mine with a science project. But what you're really giving is the moment that sparks a brighter tomorrow.
To learn more, please visit DonorsChoose.org. That's DonorsChoose.org. Choose students. Shape the future.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
No competitor worth their salt's going to go, yes, we lost. I don't think you're likely to find that anywhere. But what you will find are instances in the world of sports where you get losses that happen and it's a blessing in disguise. In big power conference college basketball, not Conference USA, in other words, with all due respect to the Liberty Flames in their conference. Not JMU in the Sun Belt. They lost this past weekend as well. But in bigger conferences, a loss in the conference tournament for teams that are going to the NCAA tournament, and maybe it slightly impacts their seeding, but by and large are really good teams, it's got a negligible impact. Houston in the Big 12, Duke in the ACC. I know they'd love to win the regular season, plus the tournament, plus the NCAA in the hardest season ever of the maybe any conference ever in the SEC, but the Auburn Tigers. Like those teams, it can be a blessing in disguise. Liberty's on the opposite end. They need to win their conference tournament. But sometimes when you're riding a 6-game winning streak and you've won 9 out of 10, not that you want to lose, but there have been games in that win streak, or even that kind of win streak of 9 of 10, where you've played good enough to win, bad grammar aside, but you're not playing well enough that it's up to your standards and you want it every night because if the other team's playing their best, they can make you pay. Liberty was an example of that this past weekend. And I think as much as anything, as Richie McKay mentioned afterwards, by and large, it was not an off night for the offense.
I mean, they ran it against us in Kennesaw, and we shot them out of it. We 9 for 24 is probably not going to shoot them out of it. But I mean, please don't get me wrong. Like, that's what they do, so it's great. But I love it when people play a zone.
I love it when people play a zone. And Liberty with 80 points. I mean, look, that's the type of performance you want from your offense. So when you lose scoring 80 points, let's go to the other side. And remember, this is basketball where there's not special teams like in football. It's on the other side of the ball. And that's this. Liberty was clearly not where they needed to be on the defensive end, as Kata Matheny mentioned afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, obviously their two guards had a heck of a game. Let them kind of control the game, and we knew that going into the game. And then obviously their 1-3-1 kind of confused us there for a little, and we knew they were going to do that. Kind of let the offensive end affect the defensive end. But I mean, we scored 80 points. It's just not typical of us to give up that many points. So just gotta adjust going into next week.
Not typical of us to give up over 80 points. Look, you heard it from Caden Matheny, and you also heard it from Richie McKay afterwards, but they're not wrong.
I don't know, Eddie. These are probably similar minutes to what we've done most of the year, and we hadn't lost for 31 days, and we were okay with it. So I'll have to ask the guys, did you run out of gas? I just know you can't. Usually not going to win a game if you give up 64% shooting in the second half and 50 for the game. It hasn't been our MO this year.
Don't get me wrong. Like on a certain level, this is concerning what happened with Liberty last night, because it's another game where they're not at their best defensively. And that's not the calling card. It's not the identity. But when these things pop up, it can be an issue. But there is some truth to this as well, that this can be a good thing to lose the way that Liberty did. You jumped out to an 11-point lead in the first half. You find yourself down by as many as 14 points in the second half. Here's a little math. Plus 11 to minus 14 gets you to a 25-point swing. I know, we're good for something here in the fast lane. And for Liberty, when you have that type of variance and swing in the game, some of that's just going to happen, the ebbs and flows of basketball, but that's kind of an extreme example. But here's the thing. You didn't execute your best and you weren't sharpest. And a lot of that's defensively. You give another team, Kennesaw State in this case yesterday over in our spot.
Yo, home, the Bel Air!
Bel Air, LA, Liberty Arena. The chance to start making shots. All of a sudden they can get locked in. And once that happens, you give the other team confidence and you allow them back into the game like Liberty did, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a big hole. That becomes hard to claw out of. Look, when you're in March, yesterday, here's a calendar update for you. Today is March 3rd, which means yesterday was March 2nd. When you're in that spot, you're going to be in a spot where you're going to fight back from deficits. Like, this is the time of year where people get locked in. And it does go both ways, as it really did yesterday. 11-point lead for Liberty. Kennesaw State was up by as many as 14 in the second half. Flames came back, had a couple of chances around 3, but they just couldn't quite pull it closer to where a shot could go in to get them tied and take the lead. They just never quite got to the point where they were able to execute when it really mattered the most. Occasionally you get to the free throw line down 3, you miss a free throw here or there. It wasn't the worst. 27 of 36 from the line, which is an astronomical number. But it's those little things that clearly added up for the Flames. Now, was the loss a blessing? Richie McKay says not necessarily, but I think some of this is the competitor in him talking as well.
Yeah, Bryson, I hope not. Like, our guys are mature enough, man. They're adults in that room. They feel incredibly disappointed because we know the significance of it. But, here we go. We got a chance to respond to it. So they've typically responded pretty well, in my opinion. I feel confident and trustworthy of them being able to repeat that this week coming up.
That's the thing for Liberty that I will agree with. The idea that it's not a blessing, I disagree with that theory. Again, nobody's going to be like, yes, we needed this loss. It was great for us today. But it does have a hidden effect. Again, no competitor's going to be like, yes, I thank God we lost. You want to keep winning. Like, that's what you chase, is all the work you put in practice and even in game to game is for it to come out with you having more points than the others on the side of the scoreboard. I get it. They're a process-driven team over at Liberty, particularly in basketball. We're not measured by results. As my kids like to say, even though I don't want them saying this, blah, blah, blah. But there's some merit to that as well, which is you're not panicking if you're the Flames. Because, again, it goes back to players. Caden Matheny, who, by the way, he's got a year of eligibility left if he wants it, but he went through senior day activities yesterday. I don't overinvest in that because Darius McGee did it a few years ago, and then obviously he came back. Then it happened again last year with Gabriel McKay, who went through it the first time, and he's back this year. Caden Matheny could easily come back to Liberty. Great shooter. That's a high demand, but if you're thinking long-term about this, since we're kind of on a mini tangent here, he's still under 6 feet tall, and to be a shooting guard at a power conference level, you got to be probably 6'2" realistically, but at least 6 feet tall, is so much harder in those other programs. So that's one thing to note. But player leadership is key. And Keita Matheny supplies that. And when he says focus itself is not an issue, it's more doing the little things. Again, maybe a little bit inaccurate, but I get the big picture point.
I don't think our focus ever wavered. I mean, we know Conference USA is a beast. Anybody can beat anybody. I mean, that's what this conference is. Just had a rough one. Thankfully, we have a chance to respond. So definitely gonna try and do that.
They have a chance to respond. Like, I'm not panicking if I'm a Liberty fan, if only because the players figure this out. If anything, they're really a good defensive team. They have had bad defensive games here and there. They've had the 18-point turnover-filled 58-45 win against FIU last Saturday. So that's 9 days ago. Also over in our spot.
Go home, the Bel Air!
But for Liberty, these are all correctable things, which by and large, it's one little thing here, it's one little thing there. But if you're dismissing it, here's a sore spot, unless you're Seth Greenberg. Maybe even more so for Seth Greenberg. But a la John Calipari, free throws aren't really an issue. And then when it matters most, they're an issue. Like, that's kind of a history thing there. Memphis 2008, sore spot for me, having been there when they missed the championship that year.
Clearly your fault.
Yes, just that alone. But this is not that spot where you're in denial about that spot. You're not over at the Big River in Africa where you're in denial about what's going on. Liberty knows this. So I'm not freaking out if I'm a Flames fan or supporter for their men's basketball team. There are concerns, Trey, sure, but it's not something where you go, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? Because they're in the river in Africa.
Yeah, it shows that, the weakness on this team that could doom them is their lack of depth and the issues that they've had in second halves. It's clear they've clearly been a second half team or a first half team, and they have a theme of their losses has been struggles in the second half. But let's be real here. They're a half game out of first with Jacksonville State. So if Jacksonville State loses on, I think, Saturdays when they play, and Liberty can, beats Middle, they really just have to beat Middle. They secure a top 2 seed in Conference USA tournament. And the difference between the 1 and 2 seed is who you're playing, but ultimately what color jersey you're going to wear on championship game if you play each other. Like, that's the difference. So you still get the double bye. So I think Liberty, well, this is a disappointing loss. It's in a one big lead, like, it's manageable. Whereas, like, if you look at Wake losing to Virginia, was that Thursday last week? Whenever it was,
yeah.
where
Wake lost to Virginia Wednesday of last
week. That's way worse because that could have been the ultimate loss that kicks them out of making the NCAA tournament. So, and I know it's a little bit of an apples and orange comparison because we're talking about an ECC matchup versus a Conference USA matchup, but there are positives you can take out of this in terms of, hey, Liberty has a big game against Middle on the road on Thursday that they can kind of, if they win that, well, then there's going to be a top 2 seed in Conference USA, which is probably their goal if you ask Richie McKay, and they're 23-6, so they're still a really good team, and everything they want is still in front of them. I was looking at it this morning. Lunardi has them as a 13 seed, which actually is not a bad thing. Like, that would be a really, interesting matchup because, the 13 always is a fun upset to pick.
It's a very reasonable path for whoever comes out of Conference USA. And here's
the
other
thing. They
thing.
could lose the next. So they could lose the next 2 games, and they would be the 3 seed. That's when I would be concerned. If they lose the Middle on Thursday, then I would be concerned because then you're losing. Then you get out of the advantageous path to the conference bid.
Yeah, I mean that's
it's a weird way they structure the tournament.
Yeah, for sure. I mean that would be clearly the biggest concerning part for Liberty is the loss to Middle Tennessee. The other interesting angle to that, yes, it's a big if. But the other thing is, if you're telling me whether it's Middle Tennessee or Western, in a weird way, I'd rather beat Western because Western knocked off Liberty 71-70 way at the beginning of January, whereas when Liberty played Middle Tennessee a couple days later, they won. It was narrow, a 4-point win, but you've at least got that win. And for the Flames, I do think there's value in not being swept by these other teams that you're playing. And Liberty, so far, that's been the case. They've not been swept at all by anybody in Conference USA. And I think if nothing else, when you get to the Conference USA tournament, there's value in knowing that, hey, we've at least found things that we've done that have proven beneficial to beat other teams. You know my thing. I loathe the whole, it's hard to beat a team 3 times. Sometimes it's easier because you have the blueprint and they just haven't found a way to adjust.
Yeah. I just think getting the 2 seed is more important than beating Western Kentucky. So I would say beating Middle is more important, because if you lose to Middle and then beat Western, you're going to be the 3 seed. And then you have to play, I guess, not an extra game, but like it's weird how they do the tournament. I don't know. It's just, you don't get that day off in between games.
There are some,
you play back-to-back games.
It's
just weird. But I do have a question, Ed, and I know this is side. If there's a real chance that we could have like at least a 2-way tie for first in Conference USA. I don't think it will come down to this, but do you think they would have the Conference USA commissioner do a coin toss live on television? I did talk about this morning.
Yeah, I heard it on the morning warm-up, and folks can go back to the morning warm-up wherever you listen to podcasts. I would like to think there's a little more transparency. Not that a live video stream of a coin toss with a custom coin doesn't indicate ego, for one.
I really want to know how the coin got made and when they knew they had to make the coin. Or if, like, in the SEC, they just have every possible coin combination.
There's enough money in that conference, they might do it, Trey, for coin flips.
I'm just saying.
My favorite part, by the way, was the grainy footage of the coin. We've got this big conference, which clearly is in bed with one of the major networks, ESPN and the SEC. And yet they're going to a coin toss on what looked like kind of a live video phone stream. Hey, great if you want to watch us at Fastlane, Ed Lane, or VTR in Sports on Facebook Live or YouTube. But not necessarily great if you're trying to put together a major level of production for your women's basketball top seed in the conference tournament, which will be the South Carolina Gamecocks, not the Texas Longhorns, as decided by the ever novel and fair concept of the coin flip. I'll say this, though, for Greg's sake. It's probably better that Texas did not win this, because of the idea of favoritism toward that particular university, which they already got last year with their soft as toilet paper schedule in college football. Meanwhile, we will pivot off of that. Soft is what you want somebody to be carrying and nurturing, but hard, committed, firm is what you want when you're in an accident and you need somebody to represent you. And that firm approach comes from the folks at Trost Law. They will go to battle for you. They will fight for what you deserve if you're ever in an auto accident. And sometimes there may not be a case, but you'll never know unless you call 777-HURT or visit trostlaw.com, where you can remember all of those great details. Now, other things that happened over the weekend in the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast 5 at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
Well, over the weekend, we saw a couple of different things happen. We'll start off with the Virginia Tech Hokies. The Lady Hokies. I'm at the point now where I'd say they've clearly played their way out of the NCAA basketball tournament, as we documented after that loss on Thursday at Boston College in overtime. But yesterday was a good win at Clemson. This is not a banner Clemson team, but for Virginia Tech to fight and to hold on and to pull themselves in the 8th seed, there still seems to be a reasonable path and discussion. And the easiest scenario is Thursday, 1:30 p.m. tip right here on the VTR and Sports app. If they beat Georgia Tech in that matchup, then all of a sudden they could get a win against Notre Dame. Highly unlikely, but if that happens in the finals, then they'll be in.
But
I'm not holding my breath, but there's a better chance if that happens.
But even if they beat Georgia Tech, that could be another good. I'm looking at, so Charlie Cream updated it. They're the last team out. So they, ironically, they have to go between Princeton and Harvard for the last spot.
It is kind of ironic. Princeton, Harvard, and Virginia Tech is where we're looking. Meanwhile, the other side of the Commonwealth of Virginia Tech men's basketball, without Toby Lawal to fight back from down, I saw it at 9 in the second half. But I don't know if the deficit was larger than that. You know me, on Saturday, I was not over in but I was actually over at Williams Stadium for the ever popular Liberty Spring football game. More on that in a moment. But in that particular game, for Virginia Tech to be down and all of a sudden you turn around and they forced overtime, that alone shows me the level of fight that this team has. And you build onto it the news that came out today from Jeff Goodman, that Mike Young is going to be back in Blacksburg next year. And the caveat in the report from Goodman Hoops, which is his Twitter account, and that is with an increased NIL package, which you had to have a feeling if Young's coming back, he was going to have more
dollar bills, y'all,
at his disposal so he could acquire talent. But you add that together, and that's where I'm encouraged about Virginia Tech. You've got the fight they've shown, plus the fact that Mike Young is coming back. You know what it would take to bring him back is more of a financial commitment. But all of that put together, that's where you can gain some optimism if you're a Tech fan on what you saw this past weekend.
I was going to say is a big winner of that news is Jaden Young, who is balling of late and probably in line to get him and Toby Lawal probably in line to get, among others on this team, to get the back. I mean, this is a young team. They honored one senior, and Elijah Poteet will probably be gone next year because he's graduated out. But still, this is a very, when you only have one honored senior on senior day and you play some of your best basketball of late, it's a good sign for Virginia Tech. Plus the reinforcements of the NIL.
No doubt it is.
Number 4.
Meanwhile, Virginia men's basketball. I am not as distraught as many people might be over the loss to Clemson. I get it. They were up by 8, and they were up at halftime. But Clemson is a surefire tournament team. Right now, Clemson in men's basketball, kind of where the Virginia Cavaliers were for a big chunk of the Tony Bennett era. I wouldn't say the talent at Clemson is national title worthy, which Virginia had, I think, a couple of times, even the Joe Harris, Justin Anderson era, but clearly when they actually wanted with Guy, Jerome, and Hunter, who 2 of 3 are, by the way, on the NBA East leading Cleveland Cavaliers.
And the other's the coach of Virginia.
Yes. But for Virginia, I don't get too distraught over it. They've obviously fought. There's only so much you can do. I do think you open the search up nationally. Ron Sanchez has not been so great that you have to give him the job. You can interview other candidates, and maybe he's the right guy, and other people say no. But for Virginia, as much as this is, the Virginia roster is not well constructed in men's basketball. At some point, against good teams like Clemson, who can make adjustments over the course of the game, Brad Brownell's a really good coach. They are not going to panic. They have veterans.
Possible Indiana next head coach.
That would be a great hire for them.
By the way, I've picked who I want Virginia to hire, and it's actually a twofold reason.
All right, mine's Ryan Odom from VCU.
Nope. Richard Pitino.
Oh, my God. That would be so epic. He needs to go to Miami, though.
Okay, no, but he's not going to go to Miami. Miami already picked their coach. They're picking the Duke assistant.
I know. It's really unfortunate.
But here's the thing. Virginia will play in the Garden every year or every other year because they'll probably play home and home with St. John's. So if you're a UVA fan, you get to go to the Garden every other year with the Don, Rick Pitino. And 2, just imagine it works out in 5 years now after Rick Pitino retires from St. John's. We got Rick Pitino in Virginia gear. That's what I want. I don't think they'll hire Rick Pitino, so the only way I can see Rick Pitino wearing Virginia gear is if they hire Richard Pitino.
It's not going to be a total 180 from Tony Bennett. It's like a 173 because a full 180 would be bringing in Mr. Strong Bleep Offer himself, Will Wade, from McNeese State, which, by the way, would be really hilarious.
Well, the tempo would be a 180.
Oh, it definitely would. It would be a 180 for
Virginia fans watching that game. Be like, what is going on? Why are they running down the court?
And the funny thing is, you could do that, and you could do it next year and start winning because Louisville, they were as horrible as you could expect last year, and they're a winning team this year, as Virginia saw with the two-game sweep over Virginia and beating Virginia Tech a couple of weeks ago. By the way, with Virginia women's basketball winning at Carolina yesterday, 78-75, it's a good win for Coach Mox. The fact that they've now won 3 of their last 4 games, 3 in a row, has been really good for Virginia. But there are too many just bad head-scratching losses still on this resume. Cal at home was one of them. Obviously, Virginia Tech. It's not losing to Virginia Tech. It's the fact that the Virginia Tech revenge game was a 25-point victory. All of that means this is still for the Virginia Lady Cavaliers. Good stuff, but it doesn't change my overall outlook for Coach Mox, which is the pressure really is going to ramp up for next year. Meanwhile, we can get into the spring football game for the Liberty Flames a little bit more, but observations on that in women's basketball. Spring football. The quarterbacks, they kind of look similar in the sense that they all have some good physical traits. They've got above average athleticism with Hauk, Vasco, and Merdinger, however he's pronounced. The offensive tackles look like they're a concern for me right now. They're tall, 6'7", 6'7", and 300 plus pounds, but they don't look like they play with great leverage. And some of this may be the fact that Liberty, you've got TJ Bush coming off the right tackle side. You can move guys around off the left tackle side, but the Flames have got options there that the defense is just better right now in general and maybe better over the course of the year. But that is something that can test this offensive line. They have got some work. They've got a really good O-line coach. Philip Doss can weigh in more later this week in the morning warm-up or the fast lane about that. But it was the head-scratching concern, I would say, from Liberty's spring game, although I temper it with the fact that this defense has the potential to be really, really good. Meanwhile, for Kerry Green's team, that was a fun victory at Kennesaw State yesterday for them. Trey played the highlight on the morning warm-up today. He had to go through some hoops to apparently bring that highlight to you.
Had to fix the pat. Yeah, it's just our server. It was fun today.
Yeah, it was really acting up. But they're an underrated story. This is a top 2 team in Women's Conference USA basketball. I know
Thursday, I'm telling you, Thursday, Liberty Arena will be one of the best women's college basketball games of the season. You have Middle Tennessee, who is the class of Conference USA. They've been actually a really good program in women's college basketball, taking on a very experienced Liberty team. This is going to be a good game on Thursday.
Over at Meanwhile, NASCAR at Circuit of the Americas yesterday. The race featured some lulls, which is not uncommon for short track racing, and you're going to have that.
Road course racing?
For road course or short track racing, either one of them. I thought that was a really good third stage, though. I thought the back and forth action with multiple drivers there. Ty Gibbs, who was okay.
Hey, finished ahead of Connor Zilic. Congratulations.
Yes,
he finished
did.
31st, but he finished ahead of Connor Zilic, who finished last.
Yes, that was disappointing for those that thought Zilic might sweep the weekend. He was off to a great start Saturday, and then it didn't happen.
To Connor Zilic's credit, you know who also finished? Oh, correction. Ty finished 34th. So you know who also finished last in their Cup Series debut?
Who?
Kyle Busch.
Yes.
So
I thought Kyle Busch
looked
ran
really
about as well as you could yesterday.
Best he's looked in probably 2 years.
I know you and Brian Nolan touched on this. We might be at the point where Christopher Bell is going to have that breakout season that people expect out of him and his talent. I always thought the Joe Gibbs Racing struggle in the second half of last year was going to be a little overblown because if it's Penske or Hendrick, they will have struggles at certain points, but there's just too many resources there for it to be continual over a long period of time. And I understand Stewart-Haas Racing, Richard Childress Racing before Kyle Busch got there are examples where you can have prolonged slumps, but the financial gulf with those big three of Penske, Gibbs, and Hendrick is so different. But we're starting to see what Christopher Bell can do. Here's the other thing. It could easily have been the Liberty University driver of William Byron. The fact that Kyle Busch has been up there is a really positive sign also. I thought the racing, though, itself for a road course was really good in the third stage. You had 4 to 5 drivers battling for the lead. You had some underdogs in there that had a chance. Noah Gregson really had a good race yesterday. I thought it was really compelling and really, really entertaining.
Number 1.
Washington Commanders added Deebo Samuel. Here's why I like this move. It's a lower risk move financially. It's a 1-year rental, basically, for the Washington Commanders. Now, has Samuel fallen off over the last couple of years? Yes, he has. Could Samuel also be the detractor in the sense that he is used as kind of a running back wide receiver hybrid? And even though the Commanders may shift that role away from him out of the backfield, you have to use him at that to a certain extent, meaning more injuries, meaning more wear and tear. And Deebo plays a physical brand of ball. But here's why I like it for the Commanders. You've got your quarterback, who is a franchise quarterback, on a rookie deal, whether it's Washington or the Houston Texans, who both know they've got it. I'll put Denver in that category. Or teams like New England and Chicago, who are pretty sure they've got it with Drake May and Caleb Williams, or at least need to find out. Now is the time to strike. Even if you're slightly overpaying at positions like Washington is with Deebo Samuel, I get the logic behind that move and believe there's more to come. More on this when we come back in the fast lane. We'll get to your teams and topics, splitting into 2 parts. JMU, UVA, Tech, Liberty, NASCAR, and
those haters can't stand us. Left hand up. Who are we? The Commanders.
As part of covering the Commonwealth when we return.
We're making it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years with the best selection, value, finance options, and exceptional service. Plus 900 pre-owned vehicles all in one location. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. The Used Car Superstore is your one-stop for most makes and models. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Plus, Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile with finance options for every budget. 900 used vehicles in stock now. More than any other dealer in the area. Hurry in for straightforward pricing and more inventory arriving daily. Why wait? Make it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier family-owned car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Allstate agent Donovan Howell is now serving Lynchburg. He lives and works here just like you. And with all kinds of local insurance advice, Donovan is someone you can count on to help you protect all that's good in your life. Donovan makes it easy to save on the quality protection you need, and I'll even help you do the switching and the paperwork for you.
Call or come by the Donovan Howell Allstate office in Windhurst today.
Do you have a sports card and memorabilia collection?
Wow.
Did you inherit one? Not sure what to do with it? BNC Sports has been your local hobby store for over 30 years, and they'll provide their professional assessment and can cash you out. No collection is too big or too small, so don't drop the ball. Stop by the mall or give us a call. BNC Sports, the game starts here.
Welcome to the Villas at Oakwood. Our stunning community offers spacious, modern, wheelchair-accessible villas with top-of-the-line amenities. Enjoy views from the Peaks of Otter from your patio home. Connect with neighbors at our exclusive clubhouse. Discover your dream home today. Experience the maintenance-free lifestyle that you deserve. Visit us behind the Bedford Memorial Hospital, online at thevillasatoakwood.com, or just contact Robin Lee Sage at 434-238-4477.
Depressed about your favorite sports team? Well, VTRN Sports is presented by the perfect relaxing beach house vibe. 80 Raw Bar on Church Street in downtown Lynchburg.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Well, a little bit of a clunky end to the regular season for the JMU Dukes as they dropped the game to Texas State 102-93 this past Friday. But overall, a good regular season is evidenced by something we'll discuss right now in part one of Covering the Commonwealth.
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the JMU Dukes.
Shane_DNR Sports and DNRonline.com. Those are the ways to keep up with Shane Metland, who's with us in the Fast Lane. Shane, what if I told you, that's one of the great time-tested phrases thanks to the 30 for 30 docs. But what if I told you that at the beginning of the Conference USA slate, or the Sun Belt slate, excuse me, JMU would have Sun Belt Newcomer of the Year, Mark Freeman, first team on the Sun Belt as well, Mark Freeman, a third teamer in Bryce Lindsey, and a freshman and sixth man of the year in Bryce Lindsey. Would you take that if you're the JMU Dukes, even though the end to the regular season, Friday's loss to Texas State, leaves a bit of a sour taste in the mouths of Dukes fans heading toward the Sun Belt tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as like the all-conference awards go, that was probably what they were hoping for when they start submitting nominations. I think, they probably weren't really going to be in the Player of the Year contest. I think Richie Riley from South Alabama, they finished so much higher than they were picked in the preseason. He was pretty much a lock for Coach of the Year. But there's some good awards for JMU. I think maybe Elijah Hutchins Everett could have been in the third team mix, but overall, I think that was pretty appropriate postseason haul for the Dukes.
You mentioned the postseason haul for JMU. it kind of speaks to where this team was right now for much of the season. They were in a 4-way tie atop the standings within the Sun Belt Conference. First of all, amongst those 4 teams in Sun Belt tournament action, which is a long one, a marathon almost for conference tournament standards, where do you like JMU relative to the other 13-5 teams of Arkansas State, South Alabama, and Troy?
I mean, I think they all have a shot at this one. I think it's going to make for a fun tournament, especially when all 4 of those teams are in the quarterfinals or beyond already. So you're not going to see any huge upsets early. Arkansas State, I think, probably is the favorite. They were the preseason favorites. They've got the best non-conference wins in the conference. They've got so many guys back who played in this tournament last year and lost to JMU in the finals. A much different JMU team. I would say they're probably the favorite. South Alabama's got a little bit of a home court advantage. It's only about an hour to Mobile from Pensacola. And in my prior experience, when they make a run, when they get to the deeper rounds, you start to see a lot more South Alabama fans start to show up because they can, commute from home to those games. So I think they're going to have a little bit of advantage. But I think JMU is right there, Troy too. But, I mean, I think all 4 of those teams have a real shot to win it.
Meanwhile, on the women's side, clearly the JMU Lady Dukes favorites in the Sun Belt tournament as they went 18-0 in league play. They've got the Women's Basketball Player of the Year in Peyton McDaniel. They've got the Coach of the Year in Shauna O'Regan. I mean, this was as good of a haul as you could find, even with Rose Scott, the 6th Woman of the Year. This was a loaded team. Is it disappointing if they don't win the conference tournament, or are they at the point where they have a strong enough resume, the JMU Dukes, where you'd love to win it, but if not, maybe it's one of those blessings in disguise?
No, they want to win it because, I mean, they're not guaranteed an at-large at all. It'll be a very stressful week before Selection Sunday if they don't win it, and it'll be a big upset if they don't win it. Talk about the men's side, like there's 4 or 5 teams that would not be a shock to win it. It'll be an upset if they don't, and winning 21 games in a row is tough. So there's always a chance that you could slip up, but they really are the strong favorites on the women's side, and are going to be on a pretty fragile bubble if they don't win it.
There it is, Shane Metlin, DNRonline.com, and it's Shane_DNR Sports. Always good to chat with you, Shane. Enjoy the madness. We'll be in touch as it unfolds.
All right, thanks.
Now to UVA.
JerryRatcliffe.com founder and contributor, Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe. Hootie, great as always to be speaking with you. The loss to Clemson, the way it unfolded, obviously disappointing. You have a lead at halftime. You can't hold on in the second half. Big picture, though, was this as disappointing as Virginia fans might make it out to be, or kind of understandable when you factor in the better team and certainly the more veteran coach and player combinations?
Well, Ed, I think that just showed Virginia fans how far this program has to go. It's just a young team going up against a veteran team. Clemson's one of the older teams in the league and very physical, and they know how to use that physicality. And they took it to Virginia in the paint the first half. Virginia was able to shoot well, but then Clemson turned up its defensive intensity and really shut things down. And Virginia, I think they only scored like 18 points while it mattered in the second half. And Clemson just had its way in the paint. They scored 48 points in the paint, which means that Virginia's given up 100 points in the paint in the last 2 games. So Virginia has to get bigger and stronger and more physical in the future. And the only way to do that is just go through the normal cycle.
You mentioned getting bigger, physical, and stronger in the near future. Is that really internal? Is that bringing in the right players outside? Or is it maybe the big question mark of what they decide to do as far as the new head coach and the overall direction dictating just how physical they become?
Well, I think it's both. I think some of the guys, if they can retain them, have an opportunity to get bigger and stronger. But I think they're going to have to add at least one piece on the front court, that somebody that's a big physical rim stopper through the transfer portal. I don't see how else they're going to be able to fill that need.
JerryRatcliffe.com founder and contributor Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe. We opined on the women's as well, Virginia women's basketball. It's a nice upset at North Carolina, 78-75 yesterday in the regular season finale. They're still below 500, though, in ACC play. Is this kind of a too little too late for the Lady Wahoos unless they somehow make a magical run deep into and probably winning a pretty loaded ACC women's basketball tournament?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I don't see any other way in. They've held their ground, but they haven't made a lot of strides this year, considering that some of the talent they've brought in. Tamora Johnson is legitimate future star. But yeah, they're going to have to do something to add to the overall talent in this team if they want to make steps forward. I just don't see them doing much. They could make a run in the tournament if they get hot, but a lot of that depends on who you run into.
That is certainly an unfolding development that we will see over the next couple of weeks. And the updates will be there at Jerry Ratcliffe on Twitter or with the .com to go to his website. Hootie, thank you for joining us as always today in the Fast Lane.
Absolutely, Ed. See you next week.
Now to the Virginia Tech Hokies.
With David Cunningham of TechSideline.com. David, first of all, for the men's basketball team, which gutted out a nice victory against Syracuse on Saturday, how much more impressive is it the fact that Mike Young did it without Toby Lawal?
Oh, man, huge. I mean, that's Virginia Tech's leading scorer, leading rebounder. Hokies didn't have Toby Lawal the other day. Played pretty well, all things considered. I thought Patrick Wessler stepped up and was big in the front court. You're talking about Elijah Petit, a big man who is coming off a recent injury. I thought he played pretty well. That was a really good all-around performance from Virginia Tech. Hokies were down 13 at one point, came back to win. That's pretty impressive.
David Cunningham, TechSideline.com, with us here in the Fast Lane. David, having a little bit of a connection issue. We do these in two parts at certain junctures, which we are doing now. So what we'll do is we'll get the connection reestablished with David Cunningham and use that to kick off part two of covering the Commonwealth, which will also feature Liberty, NASCAR, and the Washington Commanders. All when we return. This is the Fast Lane on the VTRN Sports app. Trost from Trost Law, and within the last year, Randy, there have been new laws that have come into effect in the Commonwealth of Virginia that impact motorists. What are some of the ones people need to know about?
From a personal injury perspective, the most important law that has changed as of January 1st, 2025 is now the minimum amount of liability coverage you could have in Virginia for an automobile is $50,000 per person, $100,000 per incident. So now that's the minimum. And along with that, we are seeing insurance companies offer the option to opt out uninsured, underinsured coverage. Absolutely do not opt out of that coverage.
You mentioned not opting out and the dangers of opting out of uninsured and underinsured coverage. How much of that is tied to a high number of people driving around that are not even registered to drive?
That's exactly right. We're seeing higher instances of people driving without insurance. And what uninsured or underinsured coverage does is protect you from those type of people that have no insurance. And if they cause a problem for you or your family, whether it's an injury or a property damage problem, and they have no insurance and you do not have enough uninsured or underinsured coverage, you could be left holding the bag with additional expenses that were no fault of your own.
Crucial info to know. Randy, thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And if you've been impacted by someone in an auto situation, trostlaw.com and 777-HURT.
We're here with Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. Colt, to go along with your residential or individual walk-in services that you offer, you also do a lot of business IT support. How about you discuss that and what specifically do you do to help businesses in the area?
We see a lot of that. Small to medium-sized businesses, they still have their IT projects. They still need resources to help them within their office and for remote users. And so we'll step in and fill in the gap where we do a lot of projects for them, help them manage their resources, their budgets, and get their technology under control.
Colt, how can these people reach out to you to assess their IT needs?
Call us. Our number is 434-525-8590. Our website, wefixstupidcomputers.com. We're on Facebook. And our office is here locally, 14690 Forest Road, right next to Scott's Cabinet on 221.
Mark Dalton here with the Terry Auto Group. If you don't love your car, then you're simply just driving the wrong one. At Terry Volkswagen, Terry Subaru, Terry Auto Outlet and the Terry Clearance Center, we've got the perfect new or used car for you. We make your car buying experience easy. Need help with imperfect credit? No problem. Our team works hard to get you approved and back on the road. Because when you shop at Terry, you drive away happy. Visit us at any of our 4 locations or online at terryautogroup.com. Terry Auto Group. You'll love our cars.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Take 2 of covering the Commonwealth with
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the Virginia Tech Hokies.
with David Cunningham at the Real D Cunna on Twitter and Instagram and techsideline.com. David, Mike Young, the news came out from Jeff Goodman earlier today that he will be back and with an increased NIL budget, in line with what you and other colleagues at techsideline.com, Chris Coleman in particular, have mentioned would likely be the case for Virginia Tech. How much more of this is tied into Mike Young's willingness to return to the fact that it seems like he's gotten as much out of this team as you would anticipate this year, given how young they are? They fought hard. They look like they developed. But to convince somebody to come back, you have to believe that there need to be resources and steps in place so that he can retain the talent and, more importantly, the psychology you think of putting all that investment in and wanting to see it pay off.
Yeah, Ed, I think that's exactly right. Hopefully our connection issue is fixed now. I think this is a group Mike Young has done a really good job with. Not maybe the most talented group, and they certainly had their missteps early in the year where they lost a string of 5, 6, 7 games. But they've been pretty much even keel, about 50-50 since the start of 2025. And they haven't necessarily blown anybody's socks off, but I think Mike Young has done a really good job of getting the most out of this group, like you said. They've hung around with just about everybody. I mean, they've played Clemson, SMU, Wake Forest, Louisville. They played all of these better teams in the ACC with the exception of Duke, really, at home. And it's basically been a one-possession game at some point in the second half. Louisville and SMU came down to the wire. Clemson and Wake pulled away a little bit before then. But I think when Mike Young's able to do the kind of job he has done, and most of these guys have the option to return, as an administration, you're probably sitting there going, this is a pretty favorable opportunity for us to get Mike to come back and to give him more resources. And I think Virginia Tech understands that what it did last year with giving Mike Young the resources it didn't exactly give him the right opportunity to compete in a down ACC. So I think the Hokies are doing the right thing, giving Mike Young the right opportunity to succeed. And I think he can do a pretty good job, considering that it's not like this is your old ACC where the league is super, super strong. I think Mike Young could make some waves, and I think you've seen what Virginia Tech has been able to do at home this year, even not necessarily win every game, but just about being every game. I think that says a lot.
It does. Meanwhile, Virginia Tech women's basketball, it has said a lot that they've continued to fight, even though this is kind of a work in progress in year one for Megan Duffy. How simple is this scenario? They've got to beat Georgia Tech Thursday, 1:30 p.m. tip, 1 p.m. airtime on VTR in Sports. And if they do that, they've got to beat Notre Dame in the quarterfinals. And at that point, they've got a real chance to be discussed as a tournament team. Or am I selling the Lady Hokies short?
Ed, I think it's Thursday's game is pivotal. It depends on how it unfolds against Georgia Tech. I mean, this is a game that the Hokies won early in the regular season, double overtime in Atlanta. And Georgia Tech, you're catching the Yellow Jackets at a good time, I think. They're coming off 4 straight losses. Obviously, you don't want to necessarily face a team that's motivated like that, but it's postseason, right? Everybody's kind of in that new, fresh state of mind a little bit. But this is a Georgia Tech team that has stumbled a little bit lately. But Virginia Tech, I thought, got much better of that matchup when they play. You have an opportunity in the final week of the season to punch your ticket to the NCAA tournament. I think if you would have told that to Megan Duffy, if you would have told that to her players at the beginning of the year, I think they would have taken that opportunity. Can Virginia Tech get it done? I think an opportunity, a win against Georgia Tech might be enough. Notre Dame awaits on Friday, or sorry, not Notre Dame, NC State awaits on Friday. And the Wolfpack beat Hokies pretty handily in Raleigh earlier this year. It was not a good performance from Virginia Tech. I think if you put up a fight in that game, it might be enough. But I think the biggest thing is it depends on what everybody else does. And that's a kind of a cop-out answer a little bit. But there are a lot of Big Ten teams in this bubble: Minnesota, Nebraska, Washington, Oregon, Indiana. There are a lot of Big Ten teams in there. There are a couple Ivy League teams in there. And then it's really just Virginia Tech as the only ACC team. Stanford a little bit farther down, I think, on the bubble. You hope, if you're the Hokies, you hope some of the other teams eat each other up a little bit, and you're sitting there at the end. You pick up a quadrant 1 win on Thursday. That might be able to be enough to kind of get you over that hump, but I don't know that you're necessarily breathing safe and you're able to kind of calm your heart rate down a little bit until you really realize that you're in the tournament when it comes out on Selection Sunday.
David, thank you for your time and insight. It's always good when we can catch up with you. We look forward to more of this.
Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
David Cunningham of TechSideline.com with us in the Fast Lane.
Now to the Liberty Flames.
John Manson from AseaofRed.com, as always. John, good to be speaking with you. We'll start off on the basketball side of things. No competitor is going to say, yes, we lost. But is there a blessing in disguise element to Liberty losing to Kennesaw in the sense that they know what they did wrong and it gives them a chance to hit the reset button with a couple games left in the regular season and, of course, before the vaunted Conference USA tournament next week?
Yeah, I mean, it could be looked that way. Liberty entered that game Sunday right in a 6-game win streak with 3 regular season games to go. So they would have had to end up winning 12 in a row to get to their ultimate goal of, cutting down the nets in Huntsville and getting to the NCAA tournament once again. But, which in a league like Conference USA, that's probably tough to do. But, I think the bigger issue is that the Flames gave up 85 points. And, part of that is due to Kennesaw's hot shooting. They shot, 65% from the floor in the second half after starting very cold from the floor the opening minutes. But they obviously came storming back. And those 2 guards, Simeon Cottle and Adrian Woolley, were just too much for Liberty to handle. I think they combined for 46 points in that win. So for Liberty, it's getting back to the basics of that pack line defense and cutting off the drives to the basket. And that's something teams are going to constantly try to do against this Liberty team that, we've talked about for a couple of years now, is a little bit outsized, especially on the guard line. So, Coach McKay and that team, that they've done a great job this season of being a really tough team to play against on defense, but they're going to have to ratchet that up to another level here down the stretch, and particularly in Huntsville.
Meanwhile, on the women's side of things, how underrated has this season been from Kerry Green's squad?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Green's really, the last probably close to decade has had underrated teams. And you go back to the time, Liberty's time in the A-Sun, they were kind of overshadowed by Florida Gulf Coast, who's a perennial top mid-major team and a team that's won some games in the NCAA tournament, been ranked in the top 25. And then now in Conference USA, it's been the same thing. At least it was last year. And so far this year with the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders, they're another mid-major darling and a team that won NCAA tournament game last year. So, but Coach Green, is they've always been the second team in their conference in the A-Sun and now in Conference USA. But they got a big showdown on Thursday night at Liberty Arena where, if they win, they're tied atop the conference standings with Middle Tennessee team that I think, most people around the league think they're obviously a good team, but they're maybe not the same level they've been in recent seasons and probably a little bit more beatable. But Liberty has yet to beat Middle Tennessee since joining the Conference USA. And it looks like those 2 teams are probably on a collision course for a third meeting, likely in Huntsville next week. But I shouldn't say that without mentioning Western Kentucky. They've had a really strong team as well, and they're currently third in conference and just 1 game behind the Flames. And obviously those two teams will meet on Saturday at Liberty Arena for the regular season finale. But yeah, Coach Green's done a terrific job, and I agree with you, Ed. His team's a little bit underrated. Bella Smuda had that basically buzzer beater. I think it was 0.4 of a second left when she hit the shot on Saturday to pull off the win against Kennesaw State down in Georgia. So they've obviously got a team that they're hoping to contend and make it all the way to Saturday, like the men do in Huntsville, and to championship Saturday for Conference USA.
John, you've been all over spring practice as well. It's kind of part one is in the books. There'll be another reset after the spring break, but your latest article might be putting things into perspective as it's Liberty looking to rebuild the offensive line and running back rooms this spring. O-line looked like a concern in the spring football game. How much of it is the fact that they're rebuilding? How much of it is a legitimate concern? How much of it's also the fact that Liberty's, you could argue, maybe the strongest part of their defense and team next year might be the defensive front seven, which is going to test that O-line throughout camp leading up to the season opener against Maine?
Yeah, they'll definitely be tested up front on the offensive side, but I wouldn't be too worried about it from a Liberty perspective. You're having to replace 3 starters from last year's team, and a couple guys are kind of being cautiously held out during spring just because you got 5-6 months till the season starts. So I wouldn't be too worried about it right now. Liberty has brought in a few transfers, guys that they anticipate to be in the rotation, if not starters, and they'll probably go back in April when the portal opens up again and try to get at least 1 or maybe 2 more through the portal at the offensive line again when that opens back up. So I wouldn't be too worried about the offensive line. Coach Bill Durkin's one of the top offensive line coaches in Group of 5 and maybe all of the FBS, and he's proven that he can put out an offensive line that's capable of putting up a top 5 rushing offense, which Liberty's done each of the past 2 seasons under his leadership, and obviously under Coach Chadwell's offense. And I think they'll do the same thing, but they need to figure out who those pieces are going to be. So the good news is they've got 5 months and a lot more time to figure that out, and also another portal period to see if they can add a little bit more depth up front as well.
John Manson, and a seaofred.com. John, good to be speaking with you as always in the fast lane. Thank you much, and it looks like we'll see you over on Wednesday over at for the Liberty men's basketball media availability before they get ready to head down to Middle Tennessee later this week.
Always a good time being on. Thanks for having me, Ed.
John Manson with us here in the fast lane on W227BG Timberlake, WVGM AM Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville Southside, and the VTRN Sports app. Plus, as that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports.
Now to NASCAR.
Steven Stump of FrontStretch.com. Steven, great to be speaking with you. Thank you for making time for us at baggage claim or wherever it's been getting out of the airport. We had Brian getting ready for a flight on the morning warm-up today. Now we have you coming out of the airport. The racing itself, yesterday at Circuit of the Americas. Is this the best we've seen the last couple of years out of a road course with this next-gen car?
Absolutely, 100%. And I thought that the moment it ended. If you think about everything, I think everything, like all the changes that were done, it was a perfect storm. The shorter layout, the new layout was great, but it also kept the cars closer together than they would be on the longer track, so they'd get more spread out. The tires actually mattered, and most importantly, with the tire wear, you could also make passes on other cars. It didn't take knocking someone out of the way to make the moves for the win, and I think that's also what contributed to that incredible battle to the finish. We saw, all of them, were determined to race each other clean, and honestly, considering the way that a lot of races have ended in recent years, it was really refreshing just to see like that a 4-way battle between everyone, and it was just so much fun to watch it play out.
Meanwhile, the action itself, the way it unfolded with Christopher Bell toward the end, has he asserted himself? I know it's early, but as a driver that now is poised to take that much anticipated next step to being a championship contender?
Well, I mean, I'd say he's been a championship contender for quite a while now. Made the championship 4 in 22 and 23. Was so close to making it last year, but I think last year he had established himself as that contender. He led over 1,000 laps. He won 3 races. It just seemed like it was the second half of the year. They had the speed. They just couldn't get the win. And but it seems like they're starting to put it all together. And the first these last two races are signs, as shows they're headed in the right direction, and they're going to be big players for the rest of the year.
Steven, last one for you. Kyle Busch, the flip side to this equation. Is it disconcerting, the fact that he could not get to victory lane with a chance, or is it a positive for Kyle Busch that he came pretty close, and really the only thing that stopped him was the fact that he fought as long as he could, but cars on new tires, particularly Christopher Bell, able to wear him down?
I mean, I think it's good and bad. Good because, let's be honest. If we were thinking about like the favorites coming into this race, we'd think SVG, Tyler Reddick, Byron, Bell, maybe even Connor Zilich. But I don't think anyone had Kyle Busch dominating the race on their bingo card. So for the first non-super speedway race of the year, that was an incredible performance from him and the 18. They led nearly half the race, had the cautions fallen a little bit better. They might have gotten, they might have been back in victory lane, but at the same time, it's also, frustrating just for any team, to have that good of a car and have that long of a winless streak and to not end it. And so it's easy to say that, with the speed they showed, they'll easily win again. But, as we've seen in the past, we don't know if that's the case. And, that's definitely an opportunity they'd like to have back.
You'll never know for sure that you'll get a win, but at least there seem to be signs in the right direction. One of the easiest signs that you're going in the right direction is checking out Steven's work. It's Steven_Stumpf on Twitter and Instagram and frontstretch.com. Steven, good to be chatting with you today in the Fast Lane. Thank you for your time. It was great to speak with you, and we look forward to chatting again.
Absolutely. Onward to Phoenix.
And last but not least, or maybe least, just for you haters, left hand up the Commanders.
Left hands up for Washington and their newest acquisition, Deebo Samuel. Use your clues has been a phrase that Seawall has uttered many a times at Seawall SE on Twitter, at Bowie TV Sports, and here in the Fast Lane. Seawall, how soon did you start putting those clues together and realize the Commanders would not just be adding pieces, not just be looking to upgrade the talent around Jaden Daniels, but had zeroed in on a player with ties to the prior regime, particularly Adam Peters, their time together in San Fran, and Deebo Samuel?
As soon as it was announced and then confirmed last week during Combine Week, I said, okay, this thing really has legs, right? In terms of the potential for Deebo Samuel to be coming to Washington. It was a known fact that the team took it really hard when they lost the NFC Championship. If anybody watched any of those games, specifically against the Philadelphia Eagles, the Commanders definitely needed to get some more physicality about them because that defense is so physical. So it was a known thing. It was one of those where there's smoke, there's fire. So I said, okay, looks like they're the favorite to get Deebo, especially once he was granted permission to seek his own trade, because at that point, it's kind of the player's decision where they want to go.
What about Washington's acquisition itself? Do you like Deebo the player? Do you like Deebo more for the price? 5th-round pick and right now only 1 year of a contract. What's your overall assessment of how Washington is handling this?
I think overall, right, from a kind of economics and financial standpoint, I think Adam Peters is really showcasing his overall just economic, financial, expertise. And what's the overall kind of return on your investment, right? This is something that would be considered like a low risk, potential high reward, right? And he's kind of treating this like they've done with all the other free agents and other veteran players that have come in. It's kind of like show and prove, right? It's not a financial issue today. Maybe it will be tomorrow, but hey, if you show and prove, there's no issues at all. So, and you're kind of reaping the benefits of other trades as well, from the Jahan Dotson trade, from Marshawn Lattimore. There's actually a lot of trades that Adam Peters put together last year, if we're really thinking about it. So I think that's solid. But from a player perspective, when you hear the leadership talk about the definition of a commander, I think Deebo Samuel fits that in terms of what you want to see on the field. I do not know Deebo Samuel. I have not met him yet. So, we'll see in terms of the person, the guy, the man. But, hey, I'm going to use my clues again. Adam Peters is familiar with him. Anthony Lynn is familiar with him, as well as others. I think you got to take their word for it on this one, on top of the fact that from a player perspective on the field and the raising of hell he has given to the Philadelphia Eagles in the past, and the 49ers have played him, I think he fits the bill just fine for a Commander.
Last one for you, Seawall, and it's great to speak with you. How much does this acquisition of Deebo Samuel indicate that this is just about to begin? This is just the beginning of what is expected to be a very busy 7 to 8 days, which hopefully we'll be able to recap with you, at least get an update middle of next Monday, as the legal tampering period will be underway by then.
Oh, it's just the beginning. I can tell you straight up, it is just the beginning. I mean, there's a lot of holes to fill. You know, the Washington Commanders have the second least number of spots currently on their active roster because they have so many free agents. So they will be busy, and it will turn some heads when we get into free agency.
It'll be fun. That's already starting to begin. The rumors are percolating, and the information is being dissected from Candy Waller and Bowie TV Sports. Seawall, great to be speaking with you in the fast lane. It's been good to chat as always, and hopefully, yes, we'll be able to chat again next week as free agency will be unofficially, but basically underway.
Absolutely. It was great talking to you guys, and I'll be talking to you all again soon.
Candy Waller with us here from Bowie TV Sports to wrap up the fast lane. That does it for us today until Thursday. Virginia Tech baseball and women's basketball Tuesday and Wednesday, so we're back Thursday.
We're staying busy. But good news, the morning warm-up every day.
Every day. So you'll get your fill of Trey, which is really what you need anyway. And, of course, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Yes, we're back Thursday in the Fast Lane.
And so getting them navigating through the ups and downs with it is part of our jobs. And I thought it's probably one of my proudest moments of the way they've handled some very difficult situations and turned it into